What's kicking, everybody? We are finally back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I am Keith, joined as always by my compadre co-host Tom. Tom, how are you tonight, my friend?
Doing well. First time back in a little bit here. We took a full UFC card off, and it was kind of sandwiched by two individual bye weeks. So we've been pretty much gone since school went back in session. But Alexa Grasso, Viviane, Araujo, not necessarily the card that it could have been after a couple really good fights got canceled. But at the end of the day, it's the card we have, and more importantly, it's the preface card to UFC 280, which is shaping up to be absolutely fantastic. And I don't know why I say shaping up, because that card is made, set in stone. And as long as everybody makes weight, which, fingers crossed when we have guys like Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira in the event. But either way, really looking forward to UFC 280, and not that bad of a card this week, especially to break the hiatus. How are you doing tonight, Keith?
I'm good. I'm currently watching the Mets completely unravel. It's been an unraveling for the past couple of weeks. 10 games ahead back in June, July. Now just, completely shitting the bed against Joe Musgrove, and accusing him of cheating. Anyways, that fucked up my night, but my New York Giants are 4-1, so things are going well for me in other sports, and I look forward to them getting even better after this week, as well as UFC, 281. I'm super pumped for that one. Some of my favorite fighters are making appearances going forward. We've got, like you said it, we've got Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev in the main event of that one. Beneil Dariush is on that card. Piotr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. TJ Dillashaw is there. So I'm pumped for that one. And then following that is Madison Square Garden with Michael Chandler on there. If you've been watching for a while, I love Mike Chandler. So, super pumped for things going forward. A little bit of a subpar card in here, like you said, but I think there's going to be some really good finishes. The UFC has been good about giving us these lesser known fighters that may be a little bit more unfamiliar with the casuals, but then the fights end up in wild finishes. So I'm super pumped for this card because I think it's going to be action packed. As always, just want to say, please like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching us here. Give us a comment down below. We'll interact. Tom, by the way, did I just see Chance moving in the background? Is he right there behind you, or?
Yeah, no, he's hanging out back there. He is a big on top of the couch guy. He loves to be on top of the cushions. And now that I got a bunch of different throw blankets, he loves making a nice little fort for himself. I'm actually very jealous of his comfort level.
Nice. Yeah, he looks like he's getting real comfortable back there. So like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @_PickinWinners. You can also listen to us on Spotify if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to us over there. Leave us some likes, some reviews, and everything. So you want to tune in, hear what we have to say, but you're in your car and you can't watch YouTube. Spotify is the place to do it. So let's jump on in, as we always do, for this UFC Fight Night Card with our prelim notables. So, Tom, you want to kick yours off? Give us a couple.
All right. First prelim notable that I have for you, I'm going to be going with Nick Maximov to get the win over Jacob Malkoun. Reason I'm going for with that is because I think Nick Maximov, he was a little bit overzealous in his most recent fight where he came out against Andre Petroski. And basically, Petroski's a really good wrestler from New Jersey, PA area, and I think Maximov went out there and kind of didn't give him the respect he deserved on the ground, went out there and got submitted really quickly. I don't think that's going to be the case here against Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun has had some issues on the ground before. He has been submitted in the past, and he's also just shown a weakness that sometimes he can get taken down. Sometimes he will find his way back to the feet, but ultimately against a really good jiu-jitsu guy from the Gracie Academy like Nick Maximov, I think he's going to be able to get it done. done. And ultimately Nick Maximov has some really good, not really good, but he's got solid, formidable stand up and good boxing, straight punches, just like you would expect from someone from the Diaz Academy. Throws a nice mix in a couple hooks there, and then find his way to the ground and be really well adept on the ground there. So for that reason, I think Maximov rights the ship here. He's a good young prospect, and I don't think the UFC is going to let him get two losses in a row. So Nick Maximov was my first prelim notable, and I think I would even call that prelim lock.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm going to ride with you on that. I do like Nick Maximov. It was funny because back in, when was it? It was a couple of years ago now, maybe a year ago, when they were initially calling for the Nate Diaz Khamzat Chimaev fight. And Nate was spotted by TMZ. They were asking Nate about it. And Nate was like, tell him to fight my boy Nick Maximov instead, man. He's good too. Tell him to fight him. So, I always think about
and Nick was like, no.
Yeah, he's just like, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing? What are you doing?
But don't volunteer me for that for sure.
Yeah, I always think about that when I hear Nick Maximov. But yeah, definitely expected more from him after, going into his last fight. Was slightly disappointed against Petrosky, but I do like him to, come back and be more intelligent, not as overzealous as you so well put it the last time around. So I have one prelim notable, and that is, I'll put it to you like this. Rafael Assunção is old. He's 40 years old and has been knocked out in in his last 3 and finished in 4 of his. He's been knocked out in his last 3 and finished in 4 of his last 5. So he's got, or in his last 4, period. Lots of chin issues lately from Assunção. He's lost to some good competition, some solid names on there. There's a Cody Garbrandt loss on there recently, Marlon Moraes. Those guys have since fizzled out, but they were respectable names to lose to at the time when Assunção lost to him. But even if you're losing to good competition, there's only so many times you can take so much damage to your chin, get slept over your recent fights. And at some point, it does come time to hang up the gloves. Victor Henry, on the other hand, he's a relative newcomer to the UFC, making his sophomore appearance. And he does show some promise going forward, despite being slightly older than your average newcomer. I'm expecting a big finish of Rafael Assunção by Victor Henry that really puts him on the map. There's a reason that this fight is set up the way that it is. So prelim notable for me, I am taking Victor Henry over Rafael Assunção. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like that one. I like that pick. And I think this is probably the last time that we see Rafael Assunção inside of the UFC. Now he's gotten knocked out by a couple of people here now that just haven't aged too well. You have Cody Garbrandt with that knockout that put Cody Garbrandt or kept Cody Garbrandt semi-relevant. He's got knocked out. He's been submitted by Marlon Moraes. I know you mentioned that, which, Marlon Moraes no longer in the UFC. I know that he had some good skills, but his chin wouldn't be able to basically cash the checks that his style was writing. Knockout by Ricky Simone, Cody Garbrandt, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Moraes. He's got a win over Rob Font, and he also has a split decision win over Marlon Moraes. He's not a bad fighter, but like you said, getting up there in age, and especially at 40 years old, once you crack your chin, I don't see that getting better. And Victor Henry, he's gonna throw bombs, so I think he's gonna be able to get it done. A couple other prelim notables that I wanted to get through really quick. Tatsuro Taira is coming in, and he's fighting. He's fighting CJ Vergara. And in this fight, CJ Vergara's had a little bit of difficulty with defending rear naked chokes and submissions in the past. And ultimately, he's kept the past fights of his, he's kept it standing. But at times, against better competition, I think ultimately he's going to find his way to the ground. And with a guy like Tatsuro, who is very well adept on the ground and a submission expert, I fully expect Taira to get this one done probably within the first round and get that submission victory. And then you also have Pete Rodriguez take it on Mike Jackson. And Mike Jackson, the guy who's 1-1 in the UFC, really skill-wise probably doesn't belong. He's probably not in the same echelon of caliber of fighter as the rest of the UFC roster. His lone UFC win is against CM Punk, and his lone MMA win is against a guy who was 0-0-0, and even in that went into a split decision. That was 10 years ago. 6 years ago, he had a loss against Mickey Gall. Went to a unanimous decision win over CM Punk, in which Dana White was pissed at him for not finishing the fight earlier. But ultimately, if you're not going to be able to finish a guy like CM Punk, who had just gotten into the MMA scene, MMA as a competition at that time, it was like I think it was CM Punk's like second fight. And Mike Jackson, a guy who had been competing and training for a very long time, you're going to want to put a guy like that away. And the fact that he was playing around Dana White didn't take that lightly. And over it got turned to went to a draw. And then fighting very sporadically, won by disqualification over Dean Barry 5 months ago. And this fighting again, a lot of people are rooting against Mike Jackson to lose here. And ultimately, I think he's gonna. I don't think he's that good of a UFC fighter at this point in his career, really at any point in his career. And I think Pete Rodriguez, he's got some really good power. He was knocked out in his most recent competition 8 months ago by Jake Della Maddalena, but ultimately against guys like Jake Della Maddalena, who are the top echelon of the division and definitely rising stars. I'm gonna forgive that one a little bit, especially when you're talking about the competition and Mike Jackson. So I like Pete Rodriguez to get it done here.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Super disappointing, what went down with Dean Barry against Mike Jackson the last time around. But Mike Jackson, professional fighter or a guy that got really, really lucky and is locked into a contract by the UFC. I'll bet against him 9 times out of 10. Even if this one ends with some sort of weird freak eye gouge like the last one against Dean Barry did. So be it. I'd still rather never put my money on Mike Jackson. I was just looking this up because it reminded me, Dean Barry, was he cut by the UFC after that eye gouge? Yeah, wow.
He was cut or he left or something like that. But He definitely was following that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Fucking Mike Jackson, dude. Dean Barry actually, he didn't look super impressive in that fight. There was a little bit of promise, with what he was.
Yeah, people were excited about Dean Barry.
Yeah, he was coming in with a lot of promise. So, I'm definitely tailing you with the more so than anything, it's the anti-Mike Jackson pick. But I'm going to tell you with Pete Rodriguez here, 4-1 guy. I'd take him over Mike Jackson any day. Not a Mike Jackson hater. Well, kind of. But we'll move on up to the main card now. And that opens up with, this is how it stands as of now, Sunday night recording. We always know that things can change as the week goes on. But we've got Misha Cirkunov versus Alonzo Menifield. And Misha Cirkunov, I believe, is taking this one on slight short notice, as a lot of fighters are on this card. But, and he's stepping in at light heavyweight when lately he's been fighting at middleweight against Alonzo Menifield, who always fights at light heavyweight. Misha won't cut as much weight this time around as he has in recent fights, but he did fight at light heavyweight in the past, dropped down the division. He has had chin issues lately, and against a guy like Menifield who hits pretty hard, especially for a light heavyweight, this could be an issue. I think Misha Cirkunov is slipping 1-4 over his last 5. He's been in the UFC for a really long time, since 2015, but he's recently seen a variety of issues, including a weakened chin. And that really came after fighting guys like Volkan Ozdemir and Glover Teixeira years ago. And those guys really cracked his chin, and I don't really think he's ever recovered from that since. The submission defense is slipping quite a bit as well. And then you have Alonzo Menifield, who heavy-handed, he has good fight IQ, and lately when he drops a guy, if he does, but when he does, he jumps in for submissions and tries to lock things up rather than just going for the stupid ground and pound. Not the ground and pound is stupid, but there's times when it's not as intelligent to go in for the ground and pound, and you're better off trying to lock something up. So I think Alonzo Menifield is going to drop Misha Cirkunov, and he's going to finish it somehow with Cirkunov on his back, whether it be by a TKO or by submission. it's going to be either or. But I do look forward to seeing Alonzo Menifield put on a good performance, and I think he will win this weekend. What do you think, Tom?
I agree with you, and especially I spent the majority of your description there trying to look up what exactly is the deal with Misha Cirkunov's left arm. It is about 30 to 40% smaller than his right arm, and after getting that flash armbar by Wellington Turman in his last fight, I really don't have that much confidence in Misha Cirkunov at all. Um, Typically in this fight, he would be better on the ground than Alonzo Menifield, but like I said, if you're getting armbarred by Wellington Turman, I don't know if I can venture to say that you're going to have a strength in that area against really anyone. And then you mentioned that this is going to be at 205. A fight that Alonzo Menifield has knockout power at and is used to fighting at as well. Misha Cirkunov has fluctuated between 85 and 205. I think Alonzo's going to be quicker on the feet. He's going to land with more power. Misha has been beaten by, his own specialist, like I said, guys on the ground, now moving up after 3 losses at 85. Alonzo's a big guy. He may have issues getting muscled. Like if Misha Cirkunov is trying to, engage in the grappling and is going to try and muscle around Alonzo Menifield, he's going to really have a hard time doing that because of the build and the size and the strength of Menifield. I think Menifield has all of the grappling and the strength combination that he's going to need. In order to keep it standing, I think he's going to land big overhands, and he's ultimately going to put Misha Cirkunov away in probably the second round, potentially even the first, depending on just how many, how much those losses are accumulating on Misha Cirkunov.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Another guy, we were just talking about it with the Sun Sal a little bit earlier. Maybe, Misha Cirkunov's another guy that is on his way out of the UFC. I mean, he's been doing it for quite some time, coming up on 7 years almost at this point, or over 7 years. So who knows? Maybe that's coming to the end for Misha Cirkunov. So to move on up to the next one, we've got Duško Todorović versus Jordan Wright. And I think there is a good chance that someone could be going to sleep in this fight. Both men, again, weakened chins lately. And that's why, something I brought up before, these are names that may not be as familiar to some of the more casual fans, and not even saying casual is an insult. I know that's an insult that gets tossed around, in the social media world. But I don't even mean it as an insult. It's just that, a lot of people aren't as deep into this sport as some others are out there on the internet. So, maybe people aren't as familiar with Duško Todorović and Jordan Wright, but this is a fight that promises a little bit of action. Both of these guys are heavy hitters. They like to stand and bang sometimes. I kind of have a little bit of a different prediction for this one, but there is a good chance that maybe somebody goes to sleep here. And both of these guys have gotten dropped on their feet in the past. But I think in his past few fights, Duško, he seems a little bit more willing to engage in grappling. He isn't very intelligent when it comes to that. We saw that in his last fight with Chidi and Jokuani, where he showed that he doesn't really know when to disengage. He tries to hold on to things for a little bit too long than he should be. Chidi almost locked up submission against Duško, and then ultimately ended the fight with a standing elbow just right after disengaging standing clinch. So not super intelligent from Duško, but he does have solid grappling. It's not smartly used. It's not intelligently used, but the skills are there. So this time around, I actually think that Duško will grapple after standing with Jordan Wright for a little bit, and he will be the better grappler. I don't think that Jordan Wright is particularly intelligent in that realm either, but I'm going to find out what Tom has to say in a second. But I think that rather than what a lot of people think is going to happen, this fight finishing in a knockout, I think that this will actually end with, a lot of action for 15 minutes, but maybe Duško Todorović winning by decision. What do you think about this one, Tom?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm right there with you. I think Duško Todorović is going to take this one. Duško, like you said, he is a grappler by trade. He has decent stand-up that's actually been coming along throughout his more recent fights. He doesn't move his head too much, and he can also get caught when he's standing still. When he goes to, if people are throwing punches, sometimes he will pull his whole body away and keep his feet standing, which can lead him to follow up punches, especially to the body. But it gets him hit more than it doesn't. Standing tall is also been an issue of his. That's when he got elbowed by Chidi Nojukani after a clinch, after being engaged in the clinch. He has a decision loss to Gregory Rodriguez, and he was knocked out by Punahele Soriano. He's only really been at this point in his UFC career only been out grappled by Gregory Rodriguez. He Interesting fact is at 185 pounds he beat Michael Pereira. We know Michael Pereira has found a lot of his success at 170. But something interesting to note. Moving over to Jordan Wright, Dana White Contender Series guy. His first appearance ended in him getting KO'd by Fluffy Hernandez. It was later overturned to a no contest after Fluffy Hernandez basically failed the drug test for weed. For Jordan Wright, his wins are over guys like Ike Villanueva and Jamie Pinkett. Jamie Pinkett is not a bad win, but Ike Villanueva, I really don't count that very highly at all. Ike Villanueva is not a guy who had a very successful UFC career at all. So wins over him, I can't put too much weight behind. His losses are to Marc-Andre Barriol versus Guillotine, and that's off a guillotine where Jordan Wright actually went for the takedown attempt and got locked up in it, and then he had to tap. He was losing the standing battle, which is what forced him to go for the takedown anyway. Standing is really where his bread and butter is. He has success on the feet with his karate kickbox style, but similar to Duško Todorović, he can leave his head open. Similar to Duško Todorović, he can leave his head open a lot, and that's what happened against guys like Silva when he was in the clinch. He has his win over Jamie Pinkett. Jamie Pinkett left his head open during a takedown on the fence, and basically Jordan Wright just dropped a bunch of elbows on Jamie Pinkett. So I think that's more of a technique and a fight IQ thing on Jamie Pinkett's end than like a stock rising win for Jordan Wright. So for all of those reasons, I think Duško is not going to put himself into bad situations that Jordan Wright's going to be able to take advantage of. He's going to be the better grappler by a solid margin. I think it actually probably won't even be that big of a discrepancy when it comes to striking, but Duško having that in his back pocket is going to give him all the edge. I think him winning by decision is a pretty solid pick. But I just don't have any faith that Jordan Wright is going to be able to withstand 3 rounds in there with a capable UFC fighter. So for that reason, I'm taking Duško and I'm taking him by finish. I think he's going to be able to take Wright down. I think he's going to be able to use that ground and pound, finish him in the first. He's going to be too strong, too good, and basically just too Serbian.
Too Serbian. That's a good one. Yeah. I think I was going with the Duško by decision just because it's slightly contrarian. And, I see that the public is going with Duško by finish very heavily. I don't think Jordan Wright has as much of a chance in here, as if I were to say, like, let me take Jordan Wright to fade the public. I just think maybe the fade the public pick here could be Duško by decision rather than by finish. But, I think, like I said, to preface that whole, my whole explanation there, somebody really could go to sleep in this one, and it's highly likely that somebody does. So, regardless, taking Duško. Glad we're, we align there. That would make it, super lock. That's what I was looking for. Nice. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. We've got Askarov versus Brandon Royval. I don't have a lot to say about this one, just that Askarov has real wrestling, like real heavy-duty wrestling, great grappler. We all know Askarov wants to go in and wrestle guys. His opponents all know it. Whether he wins or not is just going to be determined by how well he transitions and controls positions on the ground to win by decision like he does when he wins. I mean, he doesn't have the power to really finish anybody on their feet or anything. He's just, he's a heavy-duty grappler. And in a division that's made up with guys that can do it all, that's why he really hasn't broken through to become the champion yet. Sits high up in the rankings, but, there's a reason why Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno keep running it back, because the two of them can do it all. Askarov is very one-dimensional, but, I trust his wrestling against a guy like Brandon Royval, who has shown that he can, he can get it done on the ground. But I don't think his defensive grappling and wrestling is good enough to get it done against Askarov this weekend. So I'm rolling with Askarov. Who are you taking, Tom?
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. And I think it has the potential to have an upset out of the last few fights that we've talked about. If I had to pick an upset fighter, I probably would pick Brandon Royval because he's so creative and because he's so aggressive off of his back, and he has some pretty interesting and pretty snappy kicks and some good stand up of his own. But ultimately, when you look back at who these guys have fought, Brandon Royval has the guillotine choke win over Matt Schnell. Has a split decision win over Rogerio Bontorin. He has 2 losses, one to Alexander Brantuja, submission by rear naked choke, and he got his own shoulder injured in some ground and pound from Brandon Moreno. And those were 2 losses right there. Looking at Askarov, Bullet Askarov, Russian guy. He's got that grappling pedigree. He is able to get almost everybody he fights down to the ground and be able to control them. In his most recent fight against Kai Kara-France, Kai Kara-France was able to deny those takedowns, keep it standing, and able to pick them apart. But even then, it was still a pretty close fight, even though Kai Kara-France won it by unanimous decision. It doesn't, mean it wasn't a close fight and that Kai Kara-France had won very clearly. I think it was very, very close. And I think even though all 3 judges gave, Kai Kara-France 2 rounds to 1, and I think 1 or 2 might have even given him all 3 rounds, I can't emphasize enough that it was a very close fight. And, if you were maybe half paying attention, Askarov definitely could have won that fight. And then you look at him going in and having the decision win against Joseph Benavidez. I know that wasn't the best version of Joseph Benavidez, but ultimately these are 2 grappling heavy guys, and Askarov is going in there and getting it done, this time pretty convincingly. And then 2 years ago against Alexander Brantuja, he was able to go in there and against the guy that Brandon Royval was taking down and eventually did get submitted by, no. Brandon Royval eventually submitted Alexander. No, he got submitted. That's right. Sorry, flip flop in there, but. Brandon Royval, he got submitted by Alexander Brantuja because he was very, very aggressive off his back and ultimately found himself in a position and a little bit more tired against the very skilled Pantuja. Against Askarov, Brantuja was trying to be aggressive off his back, but Askarov in this time always found himself in the better positions. He found himself with very low hips, chest-to-chest positions that even though Pantuja was trying to be creative and was spinning around and, forcing those scramble positions, Askarov was always finding himself on top, except for maybe the last 5 or 10 seconds of the round. And for me, that says a lot about the discrepancy between the grappling of these 2 guys. Brandon Royval is going to go out there and be aggressive. He could potentially gas himself out. And then because he's so offensive, looking for the submission positions, he ultimately leaves himself open to be caught. I think Askarov, because he grinds to decisions, he's a little bit more conservative, but he's not going to find himself in bad positions. And as Brandon Royval maybe tires in the second and the third, Askarov is just going to continue with that pressure and ultimately win a 2 to maybe 3 round decision over Brandon Royval.
All right, nice. So that is another super lock. So now we're moving on up to the co-main event, and that is Jonathan Martinez versus Cub Swanson. Listen, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to kick it over to you because I want to hear what argument you have to make. But I'm rolling with Cubby. I'm basically a lifelong Cub Swanson fan at this point, so I know there's some fan bias going in here. I do want to hear what argument you can make for Jonathan Martinez if you have one. But I just think Cub Swanson, even at this age, that win over Darren Elkins the last time around, and he just shows that he can still get it done with his hands. Sure, he's not the Cub Swanson of old, but all right, I saw that face. I'll kick it over to you. What do you got for us?
Well, no, I mean, listen, Cub Swanson is definitely he definitely still has some remaining in the tank, but I don't think that he is going to go out there and maybe set the world on fire, continue to set the world on fire. We have to also take into account, the guys that he's knocking out. He knocked out Darren Elkins, and I'm not saying that it was an early stoppage by any means, but I mean, you had Darren Elkins kind of falling all over the ring, and this is a guy who's been in a ton of tremendous wars. So I'm not going to jump and say like, oh, wow, he finished Darren Elkins, and that's really difficult to do. Darren Elkins at this point in his career is, he's got a ton of scar tissue on his face, and he has been hitting the head a lot. So, I mean, good for Cub Swanson at 38 years old, going out there and still looking good and putting in those combinations and be able to put it on Darren Elkins. But it's not like he's facing the highest level of competition. And then he's got the loss against Giga Chikadze, which happened quite early in the first round via that liver kick. And then he's got a win over Daniel Pineda and Chrome Gracie. And Chrome Gracie, I don't think we've seen him fight since. So, at 38 years old and 11 months, almost 39 years old, fighting at the lower weights where speed is really super important when you're talking about the deciding factors in a fight. And speed is one of the first things that does go on fighters. I'm nervous for Cub Swanson going into this fight, especially considering you're going up against a guy like Jonathan Martinez, who is known for his poise inside of the UFC. He's also 10 years younger. And his most recent fight, he's coming in at 135 pounds, and they're fighting this fight at 135 pounds. And Cub is now going to be coming down, most recently fighting at 145. I think dropping that extra 10 pounds for a guy who's 38, 39 years old is going to be really, really difficult for Cub Swanson. And then when you talk about speed and what that is going to do to you, draining all of the water out of your body, then trying to rehydrate is definitely not what you need for optimal speed, especially at 39 years old. So that concerns me for Cub Swanson. And then you talk about Jonathan Martinez, a guy who is poised, who typically will walk people down, pick them apart from the outside. And more than anything, I think his technique when it comes to his stand-up, having useful leg kicks that could slow down Cub Swanson even more, make him go onto his back foot and then walk him down with his boxing. Jonathan Martinez is a guy who doesn't get hit too much because he comes in, very tight. He's got almost like that Mexican style of boxing where they keep their hands in very tight no matter what, and then they'll maybe drop them. But when they're going to come in and ready to exchange, their hands are going to be uptight, and then they're going to throw. So I think for all of those reasons, I think Martinez is going to get this one done. Cub Swanson maybe throws a little bit more volume in the first round, trying to get Martinez out of there, but I don't think he's going to get Martinez out. I think Martinez is going to use good teep kicks, kind of keep a good distance. He's going to use his head movement. I think he's going to throw ultimately more volume as the fight goes on. For all those things, in order for Cub to win this fight, he's got to really bring it in close and make it a war. He's going to want to land on the chin. And, I don't think Martinez is going to do that. Like I said, he keeps his hands in close. He stays on the outside, uses those teeps. Like I said, he's got really good timing. And, he doesn't use very extra, a lot of extraneous motions too. So his cardio is going to be there as well. So I think for all those reasons, I'm taking Jonathan Martinez to get this one decision. I'll go decision.
Yeah, I'm glad I passed it over to you because there was something I failed to consider before. Maybe I just missed it, but the fact that Cub Swanson is coming down that extra weight class. And I think that a guy of his age, that's going to be one of the most deterring factors going into this fight. When you're almost 40, cutting weight is already bad enough as it is. But, yeah, just the speed, the strength, all the things that come with it, cutting weight even further down than you have been over the past couple of fights. Those are all super, super important. Now, does Cub have a chance? I don't think it's completely one-sided here, but I'm still leaning towards Cub, but you definitely swayed me over to the Jonathan Martinez side. That's why I'm glad I passed it over. Hey, solid argument, man. There were things I just had missed out on ahead of time. So we're gonna move on up to the main event now. We've got Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo. I always say her last name.
Yeah, I was listening to her one of her more recent fights, and I was listening to them pronounce it, and it's Araujo.
Okay, I used to think it was.
You would separate the first and second syllable. Araujo.
Araujo. Okay, no, I think you're right about that, but I'm not taking her anyway this week. I'm going to roll with Alexa Grasso. I think the competition for Alexa Grasso has been huge lately. She's fought a lot of the fighters in across these women's divisions that people are like, oh, that's going to be the next champion, or they're up there in title contention. Beat Joanne Calder-Wood. Still calling her that. I know it's Joanne Wood, but Joanne Calder-Wood. That's what she is to me. Macy the Future Barber, Jiyeon Kim, lost to Carla Esparza, beat Carolina Kowalkiewicz. And she's just fought essentially moved up, and fought kind of the who's who of women's MMA at this point. A lot of these fighters that a lot of people are they're up next, and then here comes Alexa Grasso and gets it done against them. I think she's got it in all realms. She can stand, she can grapple, but I think the grappling is really the strong suit for Alexa Grasso. Winning fights by submission, winning fights by, some pretty solid unanimous decisions over women that are solid grapplers as well. The control time is huge. We talk about that a lot with women's MMA, and Alexa Grasso knows how to control time, how to gain control time on the ground, transition well into different positions, maintain control in positions. Loves the side control. So I'm going to roll Alexa Grasso to just, I mean, this is a 5-round fight, 25 minutes long. May not be super entertaining, but I do think that Alexa Grasso is going to get this one done by way of decision. There is a potential for maybe a submission in there if Viviane Araujo gives up her back at some point in there. But I definitely think Alexa Grasso is more than likely to control on the ground for 25 minutes. What do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, I don't know if this one's going to be super tightly contested. I think Viviane Araujo, may have some success early with the takedowns and control time, but historically, Alexa Grasso has been hard to get down, and she's fought, people who are traditionally really good in the grappling game to begin with. So, just like you talked about a little bit, the level of competition. Araujo is coming off of a unanimous decision win over Andrea Lee, where after the second round, Lee was talking about her feeling like she was going to pass out. But nevertheless, it was really good presser by Araujo against Andrea Lee, who had looked pretty good coming up until that. Before that, Caitlin Chookagian, she had a unanimous decision loss against. She had a win against Roxanne Modafferi. And, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know how we feel about her. Montana De La Rosa, she's got a win over, and then a loss to Jessica Ai 2 years and 9 months ago. So a decent level of competition for Viviane Araujo and Alexa Grasso. We're looking at her in her 5-on-in. She, submitted Joanne Calder-Woodward, like you like to call her. She has a unanimous decision win over Macy Barber, in which Macy Barber, was a hot touted, very high ranked prospect or highly thought of prospect coming into that fight. Even at just 22 years old, she was a very, very good and still is a grappling opponent for her. And, Alexa Grasso just ended up in dominant positions throughout that fight. She also has the win over Ji Yeon Kim in a unanimous decision. She has a decision loss against Carla Esparza. It was a majority decision and a pretty close fight against, the grappling specialist in Carla Esparza. And also a win over Carol Kowich, like you talked about. So, for all those reasons, I think Alexa Grasso in the second, third, and beyond is going to be able to have that grappling advantage and end up in the top dominant positions. Araujo has a good ability to catch leg kicks and transition them to the ground, where she's going to have the advantage, I think, in maybe the beginning rounds. But like I said, as time goes on, I expect the younger Alexa Grasso to take over here. I think that Araujo can get a little bit reckless. She does allow herself to get hit, like in the Andrea Lee fight. I think, she's happy to cover distance, but she can get a little bit reckless when she does that. So when she's going to be rushing in and trying to engage with somebody, she leaves herself open to get hit. And I think Alexa Grasso is going to be able to piece her up in those transitions. She has really fast, really accurate, straight shots. Her stand-up and her boxing ability is one of her strengths, and her ability to keep at range is another one of them. And I think against Viviane Araujo, who's going to try and come in and get that fight to be dirty and on the ground, that's just exactly playing into Alexa Grasso's hands. And for that reason, I'm going with Alexa Grasso to get it done here in a decision over Viviane Araujo.
Nice. So that is another super lock. Yeah, I don't think that fight's going to be particularly entertaining, but, Alexa Grasso should get it done. So we will run down our picks real quick. Let me just pull up the good old Tapology. All right. Whatever music that was, sure. I like it. I can picture that in an elevator.
This?
Yeah. I don't hate it. Okay, let's switch up this week. All right. So for my prelim notable, I am tailing you with Pete Rodriguez over Mike Jackson. I'm taking Victor Henry over Rafael Assunção. And I'm going to take Nick Maximov over Jacob Malkoun. For the main card, I'm taking Alonzo Menifield over Misha Cirkunov. Duško Todorović over Jordan Wright. Askarov over Brandon Royval. Jonathan Martinez over Kelly Swanson. And Alexa Grasso over Viviane Araujo. What do you got?
I'm taking Pete Rodriguez over the UFC. transplant. The UFC talent lacking Mike Jackson. Tatsuro Taira over CJ Vergara, I'd like a lot to get it done. And I'm also going to go for the Piero Rodriguez versus Sam Page Hughes. I like that fight to go to decision. I like Victor Henry to get it done over Rafael Assunção. I'm thinking that one's probably going to be a KO. Nick Maximov's going to get it done over Jacob Malkoun. I feel really good about that. We didn't talk about it, but it may have just been added. I heard rumors about Joe Anderson Brito and Lucas Alexander. Joe Anderson Brito is an up-and-coming fighter that has a lot of real promise. So I would definitely want to look into that and maybe lay some on him. Moving up to the main card, I like Alonzo Menifield to get it done at 205 over Misha Cirkunov, who's coming up from 85 and is missing a lot of weight in his left arm. I'm going for Duško Todorović because he's a better grappler and he's basically a little bit more concerted and intelligent, has better fight IQ than Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright's a little bit all over the place. Speaking of all over the place, Brandon Royval is really entertaining, but I think Askarov, for a lot of the same reason I'm going with Duško Todorović, I'm going with Askarov. I think he's going to be able to control the grappling and be able to get it done, and I think he's a lot more of the safer pick here. Speaking of the safer pick, I think Jonathan Martinez over Cub Swanson because his 10-year age gap, Cub Swanson can get a little bit crazy, and again, Cub Swanson coming down from 45 to 35, Jonathan Martinez always fights at 35. They're going to be the same style here, but I think I think they're going to be the same build. But Jonathan Martinez just a little bit longer when it comes to his leg reach. I think he's going to use the teep kicks, keep Cub Swanson away, and then ultimately coming up to the main card, I like Viviane Araujo to get the unanimous decision loss against Alexa Grasso. I think Grasso is going to take 3, maybe 4 rounds, use that top pressure, and then ultimately be victorious in the stand-up.
All right, nice. So we're pretty much, congruent with most of our picks on this card. Just want to say, as I watch the final out of the Mets season right now, fucking terrible. Dunzo, it's going to end with Starling Marte this year. Hey, listen, that's not going to go for much longer either. And I've got some questions for Aaron Judge too. Like he went basically hitless for the first 50 games, and then all of a sudden the bat started working. There's juice balls or there's something going on there anyway. But we just want to remind you to please listen on Spotify if you can't watch us on YouTube. Follow us on our social handles. That would be @_PickinWinners on Twitter and Instagram for the main pages, as well as I am @PickinKeith. Tom is @PickinFightsTom. And comment, and subscribe to our content here on YouTube, Twitter, Spotify. If you comment while we're live, we will most definitely interact with you. So thanks again to any and all who joined us today, family, friends, and new friends. Let us know who you are in the comment section down below. That would be awesome. We'll follow you over on Twitter. But thanks to you and thanks to Tom for joining me as my baseball season ends in pure misery tonight. Mr. Met looks so miserable right now. It's fucking tragic.
Shouldn't you guys be used to it by now?
Yeah. Yes and no. It's like this team was so good for – oh, my God. That's a game.